welcome to today's video tutorial. I'm coming at you at a different angle today because I still have some things set up from the holidays. So my camera angle is a little bit different. But if you would, before we get started, drop your name down in the comments and say hello. We'd like to welcome you all. If you'll start that would be great. My name is Sonja Chandler, and I have a furniture and decor refinishing business here in Nashville, Tennessee called Socks On A Rooster. So today's video is going to go over how to create a beautiful finish with Amy Howard pigment powders. And these have become one of my all-time favorite products, along with milk paints. In fact, the milk paints are created with these pigment powders. We're going to use several different colors today, many variations. I'm going to give you 3 variations on how we use these pigment powders, and you may have seen a finish with this before. When I'm all finished here, you may say, that's something I've seen before and I've always wondered how they have done it, or you may have not seen it and you might be really excited about how simple it is to do with what it turns out. It is a beautiful finish. A lot of times you can see these finishes at antique shows on painted furniture, and a lot of times it's very unknown, or you're not able to ask, or if you do ask, nobody's going to let you know what has been used on these finishes. So we're going to show you what those are today so that you can do them for yourself. Now, the Amy Howard at home pigments are the real deal. They are quarried, natural ingredients, quarried and flown in from Provence, and they are beautiful. There are many colors to choose from, and I'm just going to show you 3 variations here today that you can use. But you can create numerous color combinations with one step as your base, and then your pigment powder as your overlay. Okay guys, so here I am with my 3 base coats. I've got 3 colors of one step here, actually 4 colors, but I have everything already base painted here. You're just going to want to put 1 or 2 coats of your base paint on, and this one I am using French blue, one step. Here is Selznick gray, and this is black with just a little bit of Windsor brown sponged over it with the seaweed sponge. I'll leave you some of the black. I want the black to show through, but now I'm going to move on to my wax step. This is such a simple finish, but it yields such stunning results. So I like to use the Mind Your Own Beeswax, but you can use the light antiquing wax if you so choose. But I'm just going to use my chip brush here, and I'm going to load up my brush. And when I am using pigment powders almost as a dust of ages, wanting it to get down the crevices here to make a contrast, I like to do mine a little bit thicker. Now I am going to offload still, so offload a little bit so you don't have thick amounts in that ornate finish there on your furniture piece or your sample piece. But I like my wax to be a little thicker because I tend to notice that when I do it just a little bit thicker than I would just a simple finishing wax, it tends to grab onto my powder a lot better. So I do it a little bit thicker, but not too heavy, because then you have a tendency for it to not dry. So I'm just going over all 3 of my sample pieces here that I'm going to show you today. But when I'm doing a piece of furniture, I work in sections. So when you're doing a bigger furniture piece or a decor item and you're not able to get those pigment powders all onto your wax when it comes to tack, which means it's a little bit tacky and sticky but not wet. Your fingers cannot slip around on the piece, so you know that it's somewhat dry. You work in sections on a bigger piece. That way your powder is going to stick to every area as you work in pieces. We'll work on a drawer, work on the side, and then move on. But here for video purposes, I was able to like get the wax on all three of those pieces and let these start. And you know, what I do when I'm working on a section piece of furniture, I don't walk away, because within 15-20 minutes, this is going to it's going to come to tack. And it's kind of like you got to have that time frame really perfect, because if it dries too much, these powders don't want to stick. They don't want to get down there and stick, because you know, the wax gets a little too hard when it dries, or you know, it's not, doesn't have that grab ability. So as you can see, I'm feeling here, and it's very slippery, it's very slick. So I know I have to wait. I've got to let these dry. So I let those dry just about 10 minutes, and then I'm coming back and feeling them, and they've come to tack. They're tacky. My powder is going to stick down in there. So I'm going to take my French blue, which I had done there, and I'm going to go over this with a Venetian brown. And I love this color combo together. And that's one thing you can do is you know, put colors together that you think just really look good to you. Experiment ahead of time and see what you think looks good to you. But here I'm doing the French blue base with the Venetian brown top. And I love that contrast. It looks very old world. All of this finish looks very old world, lends itself to looking very old and very rustic in a sense. So you really want to get that powder down into those crevices, and you can use your hands. Don't be afraid to get dirty here. And you can rub it in. You honestly really can't, you know, you can't really mess this up. And I'll tell you what you can do if you seem to have gotten too much, or it's not buffing off, or when you use your clean buffing cloth, when it doesn't buff off quite how you want it. There is a secret little solution that you can do. You can take your clean slate that we use to prep all our surfaces, and you can use just a touch of that on a paper towel, and you can move that wax and pigment powder around on there. And if you have gotten too much on, or you feel like it's stuck in the wrong places, that clean slate on a little bit of a rag will help that tremendously. But right now, what I'm doing is I'm rubbing that in, and I'm wanting that to meld with my wax. So that's why I'm rubbing it in. You can even take your brush and really press down into that to get that mix. And then you can take a clean, dry cloth and buff some of the rest of that away. And the pretty result that you get with the wax is you're going to get a sheen to those areas that you buff. So your French blue is going to look it's going to have a little bit of a sheen to it that is very pretty. But you're going to want to take a clean lint-free cloth, and you're going to want to knock some of that off and allow that French blue to show through underneath. But as you start to remove a bit of that, you'll start to see that French blue come through, and it's beautiful. And again, if you feel as if there's too much on there, too much of the pigment powder, you can always go back in, and you can remove, or at least you can thin out that wax a little bit, that wax with that pigment powder mix, and you can move it around again, and then buff it again. And I have found that is a perfect solution to where you have gotten too much in some areas, or you still want some playtime and be able to move that pigment powder. That I kind of got what I want on that French blue, and now I'm going to move on to the Selznick gray, and we're going to go with black pigment powder over the top of this. And this is one that there was my wax. I did not get enough wax on this on my first go round, and I noticed that when I first put it on, the pigment powder wasn't really melding to the wax. So I added a little bit more wax, but I didn't wait long enough the second time. So you really want to wait the right amount of time. That's why you want to work in sections on your piece of furniture. But if perhaps you get in a little bit of a pickle where you have put the powder on too late or you put the powder on too soon, when you're rubbing it in here, if it's too soon, you're going to get a very muddy look because it's going to almost smear all over your piece. And what you really want is it to get down to those crevices and then buff it off of the high areas. But don't be afraid to get in there and get that down into the crevices when your wax has come to tack, to the proper tack, to where it's going to grab what you need. And if you did not wait enough time and it gets a little bit muddy or sticky, you can always use your clean slate to just come back, remove it. I usually clean off my hands. A lot of times I'll wear gloves because these pigment powders, they can stain your fingers and your nails. But I will wipe my hands off and then I will get a clean cloth with a little bit of clean slate, and you can make that wax start to move around again. As we know, clean slate removes all wax and residue off of pieces when you're prepping them for painting, and they will also remove the wax that you've put on yourself that you may have not waited long enough for them to dry. But again, you don't have to worry. This is a very simple finish, and you really want to experiment with it because it creates such a beautiful finish. So I could see here it's getting down into my crevices, but my wax was still a little too wet when I added a little bit more. And so I had to ultimately just get a dab of clean slate on a clean rag, and I kind of moved it out of those areas where it was kind of too heavy. You can get it too heavy if you do not let your wax come to tack. And it's not a problem. It actually looks really beautiful, if not more beautiful. And you just got to buff it with that clean rag, and you will reach the desired finish that you're wanting rather quickly. But as you can see here, I had too much black over the raised areas where I actually wanted that gray to show through. So here I am with just a little bit of my clean slate, and you can go in and there's the gray. There's the Selznick gray showing through with the black pigment powder down in the recesses, and it's absolutely beautiful. You're going to love that one, and that's one that you could use repeatedly. Now on this one's kind of a fun one because you're going to make it look like patinaed copper. So those of us who are copper lovers, and you have it on your house or you have a copper pot, you know that as it starts to weather, or if it's outside, you can get a little rust on it, and then you can get that beautiful green teal patina. So what we're going to do here, we have our base color in black, and then we have a little bit of Windsor over top of that sponged over, but then we're going to go in with our Lure Earth, and it looks exactly like rust. So I'm just dipping a little bit in there because I'm going to tell you what, these pigment powders go the distance. They cover a lot of ground with only a little bit. So these pigment powders are going to last you forever. So just a little bit dipped in there, and it already looks like rust, as you can see. That looks like that piece. This would be beautiful on an urn. You could make an old plastic urn look like a true copper urn with this. You're gonna put this Lure Earth onto this black and Windsor one step, and you're gonna rub that in so it looks like there's a lot of rust in these areas. And again, don't be afraid to get your hands in there to, what you're doing is you're pushing those powders down into that wax that has come to tack. Now you can take some of the, you can take your clean cloth, buffing cloth, and knock some of that first pigment powder off. And as you can see, I didn't put it all over the entire piece. It's a little bit harder to see from a distance here, but now I'm going to go in with another brush, a clean brush, and I'm going to use my teal color here, my blue. So, and this is going to give it that patinaed look in the very crevices. You'll get traces of that on your copper gutters or on your copper pots that are outside, and it's just beautiful. And it's up to you how much of that teal, that blue you want to show. You can add a lot, or you can just have just little specks and traces of it in different areas. So you're just going to want to add that in wherever you still have some open area where there is some tacky wax. Wax that has just come to tack, and you're going to rub that in too. And you know, I still want some of that lower earth to show through, but you're just going to work with it here. You know, this is going to be you deciding what you want it to look like. And you can try it on a sample piece here if you like before you move on to your piece. A lot of people want a lot of copper on here, and you can, or a lot of the green patina, and you can leave that on. Looks beautiful that way. I ultimately pulled a lot more of that teal away and just left little traces of it as if it was just starting to turn and starting to get its aged patina in there. But when you do, you're going to buff that away, and you're going to see more of the rust, the lower earth underneath, and your black and your Windsor. But experiment with these pigment powders in different color variations. If you have two colors that you constantly love to mix together, try those in a one step and the pigment powder over top. I'm somebody who loves to use a cream or a deeper cream or a deeper taupe with a lighter, almost white over top. So I will probably eventually try this with a deeper taupe color, a cocoa color, and then using a pigment powder in the white pigment powder. But there are many variations, many different color combos that you can do here. And some colors, there are a lot of two color images that look great together, and you can see that here. You can go in and remove more of that if you need a little bit more of your powder away. They look very old world, they look very rustic, and they look like they've been around for centuries. So I hope you've enjoyed this video.